Ba 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 ra ba ba ra ba 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 ba. Ba 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 ra ba ba ra ba 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 ba. Salutations and welcome. I'm your host, Matthew DeSantis, and welcome to Amalfi Sports, where this week we are previewing and making picks for this big weekend's pair of Grade 1 races at Belmont, which are the Belmont Derby and the Belmont Oaks, which are both 1.25 mile turf races, with the Oaks, of course, being for the fillies. Now, before we get into breaking down the races and making picks and providing some analysis, I just want to remind you to make sure to subscribe to Amalfi Media here on YouTube, as we have a slate of these previews and picks videos for all of the graded races, or maybe not all of them, but nearly all of the graded races that we have this summer, from Saratoga to Del Mar to Santa Anita, everything in between. We got you covered when it comes to horse racing. So make sure to press that subscribe button. Make sure to like and share, comment below with some of your picks who you think are going to win this week's Grade 1 races in New York. We have a whole lot coming up, and I'll tell you a little bit more about those at the end of the video. So, thank you for everybody who already has subscribed and is checking out the video. We appreciate your support. And like I said, share this with your horse racing friends and fanatics so they can also get the best analysis that's out there. Now, there's a couple of issues that I wanted to talk about before we get into the Belmont Oaks and the Belmont Derby this weekend. Some general news as it relates to Belmont and the horse racing this weekend. The first, of course, is that one of the top jockeys in the sport, Irad Ortiz Jr., is suspended. And so he is serving this 2-day suspension over the weekend at Belmont. So he will not be riding any of these horses that we're going to be talking about, obviously. So there has been, I think, a little bit of changing of jockeys for a couple of these rides, as I think Irad Ortiz Jr. was slated to ride a couple of these, obviously having to make some last second changes to the jockeys. That's always something to keep in mind. So that's just kind of a minor point. The other thing that's interesting, if you've been following the last week or so at Belmont, is there's been a lot of weather issues. A lot of turf track races have been taken off the turf and put on the dirt because the turf is just too wet and too sloppy. And so they move it onto the dirt for the safety of the horses, etc. And so this is something to keep in mind. And I say this because even though Saturday, which is when the Belmont Derby and the Belmont Oaks are slated to take place, the weather on those two on that day looks tremendous. It's going to be the low 80s and sunny. But the 2 days before that, Thursday and Friday, rain in the forecast. So there's maybe some questions. Maybe the track will dry out throughout the day on Saturday. It'll just be interesting to keep that in mind. And that's something to always have in the back of your mind when you're thinking about some of these turf races, is trying to think about, whether or not the conditions for the track are suitable for the horses that are in the race. And so certainly let's try to keep an eye on that, and something to just keep in the back of your mind. So that being said, let's get into the first race that I'll be previewing for this weekend, the Grade 1 Belmont Oaks. And let's take a look at the field for the Belmont Oaks. And again, this is a 1.25 miles on turf. It only went to a 1.25 mile race in 2014. Before that, it was 1.125 miles. So just recently, we've seen the distance be increased. This is a 3-year-old race, as I mentioned, for fillies. And so we have an 8-horse field, and a really strong field, actually, with some really, I think, top contenders. Starting with post position 1, Conlima, trained by Todd Pletcher, jockeyed by Flavian Pratt, morning line odds at 5-1. And the second hole is Sarcona from Great Britain, trained by Christophe Furlan and jockeyed by Jose Lezcano. Then Higher Truth, which is a horse from Ireland, trained by the great turf trainer Chad Brown, jockeyed by Jose Ortiz, going off at 12-1. Followed by Spanish Love Affair, trained by Mark Case and jockeyed by Tyler Gaffleone, also opening at 12-1. And then you have the favorite coming in at the 5 post, Santa Barbara, a horse from over in Ireland, trained by the legendary European trainer Aidan O'Brien and jockeyed by Ryan Moore. That is truly a legendary connection to the two of them, opening at even odds right now. So, really, the overwhelming odds on favorite there for this particular race. Coming in at the 6th spot is Nazuna. Trained by Roger Varian and jockeyed by John Velasquez. A little bit of a long shot there at 20-1. And then in the 7 post, we have Plum Ali, trained by Christophe Clement and jockeyed by Joel Rosario. Pretty close to a favorite, the second favorite in terms of morning line odds at 7-2. And then finally, in the 8th position, you have Gam's Mission, trained by Sherry DeVoe and jockeyed by Adam Bashiza, and going off at 8-1. So that's the lineup for the Belmont Oaks. And now let's talk a little bit about the horses themselves and how they all kind of stack up with each other. So in that number 1 hole is Conlima, going off at 5-1. This is a horse that's got a lot going for it. Certainly, 6 turf races in its history, has won 5 of those, and has just recently won the Wonder Again Stakes, which is a grade 3 race, beat Plum Ali, who's also in this. We'll talk about Plum Ali here in a little bit. Very strong Beyer speed numbers the last couple of times out, 87, 88 scores there. So really seems like it's peaking, getting stronger every single race. So there's a lot to like about Conlima. Now, what I'll say is if you watched the Wonder Again Stakes, Conlima was losing ground at the end to Plum Ali. Or maybe said the other way, Plum Ali was gaining ground on Conlima pretty rapidly. So it's important to point out that was at 1 1/8. We're now stretching out to 1 1/4. Does Conlima have the endurance to go that extra quarter of a mile with this quality of field? So I think there may be some questions there with regards to the distance and how he how she handles that, and just something to keep in mind. What I will say is Conlima did not look tired at the end of that race, at the end of the Wonder Again. Looked like it was still a very fresh horse, was not really labored down the stretch as much as Plum Ali just looked like she was shot out of a cannon coming down the stretch. So it was much more kind of Plum Ali standing out than Conlima really suffering and really laboring down the stretch. But still something to keep in mind. What I will say, another thing to keep in mind for Conlima is very strong connections. Flavien Prat is having a great season, has won 23% of his mounts at Belmont, 27% of his mounts in 2021. And Todd Pletcher, of course, the trainer, great Belmont trainer as well, has been on a really strong winning clip here as well. So this is a 2 guys in terms of Flavien Prat and Pletcher who have both been having a lot of success this year and a lot of success specifically at Belmont. So certainly Conlima has that going for her. Coming in Circona, coming in at the number 2 at 12-1. I don't see Circona as much of a threat here. I would imagine those morning line odds are going to balloon up pretty closer to probably 20-1, maybe even above that. Most recently finished 10th at a grade 1 race in France. So, has gone up against grade 1 competition before, has had 1 second place in that at a French race a couple of races ago. So there's something there, maybe. Although a lot of times, when you look at the speed numbers or when you look at the times for Circona, nothing really stands out to make me think she's going to be on the board in this particular race. So I think I don't really see her as a major contender in this particular field, considering how strong this field is when you get a little further down. Now, another horse coming in at 12-1 in the number 3 hole is Higher Truth. This is a horse I really like. And there's a couple of reasons for it. One, this is a horse trained by Chad Brown. Chad Brown, it should be noted, has won 5 Belmont Oaks, including 4 in a row at one point. So Chad Brown has a great record at the Belmont and in terms of the Belmont Oaks and this particular race. So you always have to take a Chad Brown trained horse very seriously in this race. You also have Jose Ortiz, who is really hot at Belmont, is probably going to win the jockey award for the most wins at Belmont this season. So, Jose's had a very strong season. So again, strong connections there with Chad Brown and Jose Ortiz. You've also seen Higher Truth consistently have better and better speed numbers. It's a horse that has not raced much, only 3 career races to this point, but it's gone from 56 to 76 to 83. So this horse keeps getting better every time out, and she keeps improving, and she's won her last 2 races. More importantly, those last 2 races were at this distance, 1.25 miles. To me, that's always important. And that's an advantage that the European horses tend to have. And there are a few European horses, as you saw in the graphic. There's a few European horses in this field. European horses tend to go a little bit longer. Those races are a little bit longer. So many of the American horses, you'll hear me say, well, we'll see how they step up in distance. How do they go from, as I said with Conlima, how do they go from 1.125 miles to 1.25 miles? How do they go from 1.16 miles to 1.25 miles? You don't have those questions with a lot of these European horses. They can go the distance. They've gone the distance before. And that's why I like Higher Truth. 2 wins at 1.25 miles. Now, granted, this is a step up in competition in terms of a graded stakes, but there's a lot to like there. And the connections make me think that there's something to that, as well as the pedigree of the horse is very strong. So something to keep in mind for Higher Truth. Spanish Love Affair. Nice filly. I like Spanish Love Affair. Very consistent speed numbers. It is what it is. Only 2 wins, none of them this year. Did have 1 win that got disqualified. That would have been this year. Finished second to Gam's Mission, who we'll talk about in a little bit, at the Regret Stakes, which is a graded 3 race. When you look at Spanish Love Affair's time splits, seems like she could be the early speed, but does tend to struggle going this distance and going longer distances. So I don't really see Spanish Love Affair being a contender in terms of being on the board. So next we get to the favorite, Santa Barbara, who is going off at morning line even odds. Legendary combination between Aidan O'Brien, Ryan Moore. This is, if you follow European horse racing, one of the greatest trainers and one of the greatest jockeys in European horse racing history. And so you have to have a lot of respect for that combination. One thing about Santa Barbara is 3 grade 1 races. This is a horse that knows how to race in high graded stakes races, has a lot of experience, has finished second at one of those grade 1 races, which was most recently at 1.25 miles. So again, there's a lot to like there. At even money, I don't necessarily love betting on this horse, but I certainly understand why people like this horse, given its pedigree, given its connections, given its distance that it's able to go, and given the fact that it has such extensive experience for a 3-year-old at grade 1 stakes races. So there's a lot to like about Santa Barbara in that regard. I don't know if I love the money or the cost in terms of the odds, but again, a lot to like there, certainly. Nozuna coming in at the 6th spot. Again, a horse going off a 20-1 morning line. I would imagine that's going to go up. Really has 1 strong grade 2 performance in Great Britain, but otherwise seems to have been regressing or performing okay at reduced grade events. So to me, this is a horse that is not trending necessarily in the right direction. This is a horse that it kind of takes a step down in order to get on the board, and then kind of takes a step up to a graded race, doesn't get on the board, takes a step back down to a non-graded race, gets on the board. It just keeps kind of going back and forth and to some extent. So I don't love that pattern, obviously. This is now a grade 1. This is the best competition Nozuna's faced. I don't see any reason she's going to be on the board in this particular race. Now we get to the 7-horse, Plum Ali. I really like Plum Ali. I mentioned Plum Ali with regard to the Wonder Again Stakes. If you have a chance, go check out that YouTube video of of the Wonder Again Stakes, Plum Ali goes from dead last to second in about a quarter of a mile and looks like she's been shot out of a cannon, and is just flying down the stretch at the end and looks like that horse could run for 2 miles, let alone a mile and a quarter. Really like the filly. Good, strong connections. Christophe Clement, good trainer for turf, has won at the Oaks, has won the Belmont Derby as well. So has a lot of experience on turf, good turf trainer. Joel Rosario, great jockey. Also improving by her speed numbers every time out. So this horse just seems to keep getting better, which is part of the reason why Plum Ali is at 7-2, whereas Conlima, who beat Plum Ali last time, is at 5-1. I think people looking at Plum Ali realize this is a horse that's trending in the right direction. There's a lot to like there for Plum Ali. Gam's Mission, let's wrap it up with the 8th horse in the race. And so Gam's Mission going off at 8-1. This is a horse, again, when you look at it, really strong. 3 wins in 4 races, including a 3-race winning streak right now. Last one was at the Grade 3 Regret Stakes. So, certainly as a horse that's trending in the right direction speed numbers are improving. That said, based upon her previous speed numbers and looking at the other speed numbers in the race from the other horses, she would need to have an all-time performance to win this race. Certainly not out of the realm of possibility, as she has continued an upward trajectory, but it's going to be asking a lot from Gam's Mission to do that. I don't dislike the horse. I just don't know if she's going to be able to put in that type of performance for this particular race. So that's, kind of my thoughts on the field. What I'll say is that there are 5 horses I think that really have a shot. And I think, as I just talked about, Gam's Mission, certainly if she runs her best race, has a shot. Santa Barbara, Plum Ali, Conlima, and Higher Truth. I think those 5 horses all have a shot. And I certainly think that is probably going to be the board. Some combination of those 5 is going to be on the board for the finish of the race. Now, I'm not as high on Santa Barbara as some of the others. Part of it is I don't love the price. The other part is, as much as she has gone up against great Grade 1 competition, she's not won necessarily Grade 1 competition. She's placed at one of them, but, again, it's been a little bit of a mixed bag for her with that level of competition. Sometimes you also don't know how horses travel over. Do they take time to get used to running in the United States? It's a slightly different type of turf over here, so there's going to be some adjustment. It'll be interesting to see that. That said, I do like, we'll talk in a second about Aidan O'Brien and his horse at the Belmont Derby. I like that entry a lot. So there's nothing against Aidan O'Brien or Ryan Moore. I like those two quite a bit. It's just not as sure about Santa Barbara. So for me, what I would do if I was kind of betting on the day, I would have Plum Ali to win. I like Gam's Mission to come in second. I like Higher Truth and Santa Barbara in fourth. That's kind of my superfecta. Like I said, I really like Plum Ali. I like Gam's Mission at that price. I also really like Higher Truth at that price. I think any sort of exacta with maybe Plum Ali and Higher Truth, that's a nice combination to put together given that price. Although I would imagine the Higher Truth numbers are going to go down a little bit by the time it is post time. But like I said, Plum Ali to win, Gam's Mission to place, Higher Truth to show, and Santa Barbara coming in fourth. And that's what I have for the Belmont Oaks. Now let's shift to the boys in the Belmont Derby. Also a mile and a quarter, which has also just recently done that since 2014. Now, what's interesting about the Belmont Derby is you don't necessarily have the sort of win streak that Chad Brown had, where I said, he won 5 Belmont Oaks. You've only seen a handful of repeat winners in terms of trainers at the Belmont Derby. But that said, among them are many of the trainers who have horses in this year's Belmont Derby: Aidan O'Brien, Christophe Clement, Bill Mott, Todd Pletcher. They've all won, but nobody's been a dominant trainer in this particular race. So that said, let's take a look at the field of the Belmont Derby for this Saturday. And as I mentioned, a mile and a quarter on turf for 3-year-olds. Coming in at the one post is Palazzi, trained by Mark Cass and jockeyed by Tyler Gaffleone. Then Bolshoi Ballet from Ireland, the Aidan O'Brien horse I mentioned earlier, jockeyed by Ryan Moore. Then Safe Conduct, trained by Philip Serpi and jockeyed by Jose Lezcano, which is a little bit of a long shot at 20-1. Coming at the 4-post is Sainthood, a very interesting horse I'm going to talk to you a little bit about here in a second, trained by Todd Pletcher and jockeyed by Joel Rosario. Then Du Jour at the 5 spot, trained by Bill Mott, jockeyed by Flavian Pratt, going out at 5-2, which is the favorite, morning line favorite. Then at the 6 hole, you have Hard Love, trained by Jonathan Thomas and jockeyed by Manny Franco, going off at 5-1. Then you have a horse from France, Tokyo Gold, trained by Satoshi Kobayashi and jockeyed by John Velasquez, long shot at 20-1. In the 8 hole, you have Cellist, trained by George Arnold II and jockeyed by Julien Leparoux, going off at 6-1. And then finally, you have Steve Asmussen and Luis Saez, long shot hidden enemy, going off at 20-1. So that is the Belmont Derby field. But now let's talk a little bit about those horses individually. Let's start at the 1 hole with Palazzi, 12-1. Good turf pedigree. If you look at the pedigree of this horse, Pioneer of the Nile, Empire Maker, strong turf pedigree there. So reason to think this horse can perform well. That said, Palazzi doesn't have a lot of experience at this distance or this class of race. Has lost to multiple horses in the same field in other races. Has had consistent but very average speed numbers. So this horse is it is what it is. I don't get a sense that this horse is going to suddenly come out with a, an 87, 88, 89 buyer speed number. This horse is kind of, stuck in the high 70s, low 80s. And I think that's just where this horse is. And stepping up to a grade 1, I probably think is a little too much. Now we'll go to Aidan O'Brien's horse, Bolshoi Ballet at 3-1. Again, you have the O'Brien-Ryan Moore combo. Very poor performance last time out at the Grade 1 Epsom over in Britain. If you watch that race, that was a fascinating race to watch because everybody was so jumbled together until the last quarter of a mile. But you just didn't see Bolshoi have that spurt. But that was at 1.5 miles. So that was a little bit of a longer race. The 2 races before that were at 1.25 miles. And guess what? They won both of them. And so both were grade 3 wins, both at 1.25 miles, both on turf. So again, you give me this horse at 1.25 miles on turf, seems to have a lot of confidence and a lot of ability there. Also has run in a lot of different types of turf conditions, from soggy to yielding to firm. So this is a horse that has some strong background in terms of just versatility from a standpoint of what type of surface it can run on. I like that in a horse, given some of the weather concerns I mentioned, depending how much the turf dries out at Belmont for Saturday. So then we go to the 3-horse Safe Conduct. Again, not a lot to love here. Has been soundly beaten by other horses in this race, most notably Sainthood, who I'll talk about here in a second. And the last race that Safe Conduct was in was 1.125 miles. And, he really tired in that race and was really labored down the stretch. In that same race, he finished behind a horse, Shoddy, which, great name. But Shoddy just recently finished 3rd in an allowance race at Belmont last week. So, here's a horse in Safe Conduct that finished 3rd, or finished behind a horse that just finished 3rd in an allowance race. Now the Safe Conduct's in grade 1 stakes. This is going to be a very, very long shot. And there's nothing to make me think this horse is suddenly going to be able to pop up and pop up on the board, even as a long shot to place or show. Moving to the 4-horse Sainthood. This is a really interesting horse. So this is a horse that ran in the Kentucky Derby, but was a non-factor. And Sainthood's currently going off at 4-1. Came back and won at the grade 3 Pennine Ridge on a very sloppy track. Has never run on turf. But here's the thing. Horses that run well on sloppy dirt tracks tend to be very effective turf horses. This is a Todd Pletcher trained horse. Todd Pletcher knows a lot more about horse racing than I do. I think he realized this is a horse that could have a career on turf based upon that Pennine Ridge performance on a sloppy track. So a little bit of an unknown. Everybody, all the other horses in this race have a strong turf background in terms of experience. Sainthood does not. First time on the turf. We'll see. We'll see how Sainthood takes to it. So there's a lot of question marks there in terms of how that horse is going to be able to perform. And that really is one of the X factors in this race. So we'll see. I have some thoughts on it, which I'll share with you in a second. Going to the 5 is the morning line favorite jour. Really impressive American turf grade 2 win at Churchill Downs about a month ago. 3 wins in 4 races. The one time he didn't win, he finished second. Great connections with Belmont and Flavien Prat. Strong and constantly improving speed numbers. Again, a lot to like about this horse. I would say the only thing not to like about jour is the distance. He's never gone anywhere over a mile and a 16th. Now we're going a mile and a quarter. So, this is a horse that's gotten good experience, winning a grade 2 stakes race, a very strong trend in terms of improving speed numbers. You do worry, at least I worry, about that distance. That's something I always, personally, I like to see horses that know how to run a certain distance and that are a little bit more of a proven commodity. Extrapolating is always guesswork. You can look at a pedigree, you can look at how, the speed numbers, you can look at the fractions by the different quarter of a mile, different furlongs. Still, until you see a horse run a mile and a quarter, you just don't know how they'll respond to that distance, especially when they're being pushed by other horses down the stretch, which they will certainly in this field. So that said, I understand why jour is the morning line favorite. There are still some lingering questions in the back of my mind about that particular horse. So let's move on to the 6 horse, Hard Love, going off at 5-1. And this horse, you're going to say, sounds a little bit like a broken record. 3 wins in 4 races. The only race it didn't win, it finished second. Now, the only difference between Hard Love and jour, who sports the exact same statistics in terms of winning and placing second, is the quality of the races. Hard Love has never been in a graded stakes entry. That said, Hard Love posted the highest speed number of any horse in this field at 92, and has, more importantly, been consistently improving every single race. Now, this is, again, a huge step up in competition. I like the fact that Manny Franco is the jockey here. Manny Franco is going to be aggressive. He's going to get Hard Love in the right position. Now, whether the horse has it in terms of being able to, come in down the stretch and finish strong down the stretch, that's up to the horse. But I know Manny Franco is going to be aggressive out of the gate and is going to place that horse in a position for it to succeed. So I like that combination of jockey and horse. We'll see. It's a big step up in competition, no doubt. And I just said about extrapolation, you never know. It's a lot of guesswork, but there is a lot to like there with Hard Love, at least in my opinion. Now moving to the 7 horse, Tokyo Gold, going off at 20-1. This is a horse hard to get a feel for. Recently won a grade 2 stakes race in Italy. Has had a lot of different jockeys. To me, that's always a little bit of a red flag. I think this is going to be its 5th jockey in 10 races. So again, a lot of different jockeys. Some of that's due to travel and some of that's due to being, sometimes racing in Italy, other times in France, other times obviously now here in the United States. So moving around a lot might be part of that. But I always get a little weary when I see a horse that's just constantly changing jockeys. You do worry if the jockey has any good feel for the horse in this particular case. Times in terms of, quarter mile, half mile, mile splits, the times have not been overly impressive given the distances that he's run. Prior to that win in the grade 2 race in Italy was a non-factor in a grade 3 race in France. Tokyo Gold, I don't really see placing on the board. I think there's a reason he's going off at a 20-1 morning line. Then we'll move to the second last horse in this field, Cellist, which is going off at 6-1. 2 wins in a second and 4 career starts, so pretty strong. Strong turf pedigree as well in terms of its sire and dam. And so beat Palazzi last time out. We talked about Palazzi at the top. The one thing I'll say about Cellist, though, does seem to have a bit of has already kind of maxed out in terms of speed numbers, has kind of improved for a while and has now just been kind of putting up the same speed numbers, or pretty much the same speed numbers the last 3-4 races. It doesn't seem like this horse has another gear, which is going to have to kick into if it wants to win this race. I certainly don't like it at 6-1. Also, no graded stakes experience. And when you combine all of those things, it's just a lot of question marks for me, not a lot of answers. And then we'll finish up with the final horse in this field, Hidden Enemy, which is going off at 20-1. Hidden Enemy has lost to nearly half the field, including Palazzi twice. So this is a horse that's only won once in 8 starts, has been on the board 4 times in those 8 starts. And this is a horse that, again, if you look at the buyer speed numbers, indicate this horse is probably going to have to run 4 to 6 lengths better than it's ever run before in its career to win this race, maybe even to just get on the board. So again, you're asking for a kind of a performance of a lifetime to this point. Now, granted, these are 3-year-olds. I've talked about this at the Derby and the Preakness and the Belmont previews. When you're talking about young horses, you never know how they progress. They mature at different rates. Some of these horses are going to go out and put up their best speed numbers yet, undoubtedly. I just don't see anything in Hidden Enemy's resume to make me think he's going to be the one to do that. Okay. So that's the field for the Belmont Derby. And I really like Bolshoi Ballet. But as I mentioned, there are 2 X factors in the race. One is Sainthood. How is he going to take to the turf? And the other is Hard Love. Has a ton of speed, but this is a step up in competition. So how am I betting it? Well, I'm going to go Bolshoi Ballet to win. I'm going to go Hard Love to place. Just really like that horse. I'm going to go jour to show. I'm a little worried about the distance there. And then I think Sainthood is going to round out the superfecta. So that's what I got for the Belmont Derby. And I hope you enjoyed this pricks and previews of the Belmont Oaks and Belmont Derby. And that's all we have for today. But remember to tune back next week as we have a couple of previews. One for the huge day at Monmouth for the Haskell Stakes. Great lineup coming up for that. A lot of horses that you remember from the Triple Crown are going to be racing at that. So that'll be exciting. But we'll also have previews of the Monmouth Cup and the Molly Pitcher Stakes, which are both Grade 3 stakes races from that day. And then we'll have a separate preview for perhaps the premier turf event before the Breeders' Cup, which is the Diana in Saratoga, and the kickoff of the season at Saratoga, always a special time of year. We'll also preview the Sanford Stakes, which is a Grade 3 race taking place at the same day as the Diana. So make sure to subscribe to Amalfi Media so you can get every week's analysis and picks and previews of all the graded stakes races throughout the country. I always love talking to you about this. Make sure to like the video, share with your friends, and make a comment below. What do you think I got right? What do you think I got wrong? And who do you have on those races on Saturday? So enjoy the day at the races. And until next time, I'm Matthew DeSantis, and it's now post time.